And yes, we are live on YouTube as well now. Welcome everyone to Raw Live. I'm your host, Rohit Bassi. Thank you for being here. Truly appreciate this. Our guest today is been working. We are live on YouTube as well now. See, that's the thing with live is I forgot to put the sound off on YouTube Live. Okay, let me start off again. YouTube, we're live on YouTube. We're live on Zoom. Thank you everyone for being on Raw Live. Today, we have our wonderful guest who has 40 years of global sales experience, sales management experience, and business development in countries and new territories. He has hands-on sales and sales management experience in countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Qatar, UAE, Saudi, Bahrain. The list is endless. He has a deep understanding of the HR software market, over 20 years of experience. He's got experience in the HR e-learning independent sales consultancy side of things. He's an expert in driving sales revenue, market expansion, and profitability in large organizations and startup environments within Asia Pacific and the Middle East. Consistently a peak performer with strong experience in software solution selling, tactical and strategical sales, planning sales resources, you name it, he is a sales guru, an outstanding global business development guru. He is a prolific writer and an amazing writer in sales and mental health. We welcome Edward Musiak to Raw Live. Thank you, Edward, for taking the time, for being here, being a part of the show. Truly, truly appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Rohit. Nice to be here, man.
Thank you, thank you. So Edward and I, or I call him Ed most of the times, we've known each other now almost 15 years. It's been over 15 years. And it's, even though we worked closely in the UAE and obviously remotely as well, but we've always stayed in contact, and it's because of his, I would say, his ethical ways of doing sales, because many people don't consider sales to be ethical. Yeah, I've seen Edward to be extremely ethical in the way he does his sales. So thank you, Edward, for being here. To start off with, just a short brief of who you are and where are you at the moment in your life for our audience?
Yeah, it's a good question. Trying to put that into 1 minute. So I started off at 23. I had left uni. Well, I finished uni. I had no job, and passed the building with a sign on it. The sign seemed to indicate that it had something to do with technology. Went in, asked for a job. I actually didn't know what the job was. And they gave me a job, which was even worse because I didn't understand what they gave me. And that was 43 years ago, and it's always been technology since then. And, you know, it's been hardware sales to begin with, you know, in the days when we sold hardware. And I guess it, you know, based around the world. And now what I'm doing is I stopped working full-time for organizations and started doing consulting work, and I'm doing work on behalf of a number of companies, helping them resell their HR and e-learning solutions, and also doing some sales consulting work in the Philippines and in the Middle East. So that's kind of a 1 minute summary.
That's a very good summary of it. So when we decided that we're going to do this, we spoke about sales, we talk about mental health, mental well-being. We spoke about a number of things, and we decided that let's do a topic on the agonizing death of sales. It's a very, very heavy topic. Why take such a heavy topic? Why at this moment in time?
Why not? It's, you know, I think sales is going through a, you know, partly evolution and partly revolution now. You know, it's changed dramatically, and it has to. And I think that a lot of people in my industry haven't recognized that yet. And so it's it's adapt or fail. So, there's a lot of things now that weren't applicable 6 months ago. So, yeah, I think the death of a salesman, I think that the people who aren't adapting are going to go by the wayside.
So in this time, okay, we're in a very strange moment, and this is a global phenomenon which has happened now, and it's just not about being global. This can happen in a particular organization on its own, or it could happen in a country. Things can go south, things
Yep.
can go upside down. And your years of experience, how does it help you and the people you work with in helping them pass through these challenging moments which we're in?
I think that the first step is not to sit back and go, oh, woe is me. And that's very easy to do. I mean, I've been guilty of that myself. We're human, you know. I think it's recognizing that there is an issue, and that times have changed. And then it's identifying, well, what exactly has changed? I mean, with all this COVID thing, people said, okay, there's a virus. I think that a lot of people didn't dig down into what does that mean for me in my particular role? How does that specifically? So I think it's taking the time to think through, how does that affect your particular role? And then looking at, okay, how do I go about addressing that? One of the things, an example would be that in sales is very much, or has been very, very much a people thing. I talk to you, and we do that face to face, and the body language interpretation is an important issue. Well, that's gone.
Yep.
I mean, so one of the most important components in the sales process is now out of the picture. And you and I are now looking at each other. But in most sales calls, people still don't activate their camera. So you have no intuitive interaction. You can't see the person. You can't see their body language. That takes a major adaptation to the words you use, to how you approach the sales and to the sale. And that's a big issue that you can't do it the way you used to. That's one example is being able to identify what the problem is for you, and then coming up with a methodology for how do you adapt to that.
So here's the thing is, in this time where we're in, a lot of people, doesn't matter what business they are, they're saying, okay, I need to be online, I need to be online. And yet they're forgetting the fundamentals, online or offline. You need to be able to do sales and marketing. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, I think that, the world's changed a great deal. And I think it had changed a great deal from the customer's perspective well before COVID. I think that the days of, making a cold call and you telling a customer about a product that they knew zero about are dead. They're gone. They were gone a long time ago. The vast majority of customers have done a tremendous amount of research about your product well before they've spoken to you. And I dare say in a lot of salespeople's cases, the customer knows more about the product than you do, right? And so going back to your question, the marketing component is super important. The cold call nowadays makes sense if there's some foundation upon which that cold call is made, and that foundation is marketing, is creating that presence, creating that awareness, creating the letting people know what the benefits are so that people can learn when they're doing their research, because they are, so that when you come on board and you're speaking to them, it's not, we're not going from, black to white. They have some background already. So you can't differentiate the two. I think that where I've seen salespeople successful has only been when there's a strong marketing tsunami, I guess, behind them that's creating awareness, that's creating knowledge, and that then the salespeople can take that and finesse it and run with it.
So if you look at it with any organization at the moment, I do understand there is that requirement of going online, and it's a matter of getting online as soon as you can, without falling for the trap of I just need to be online, because the element of being good at your sales is still extremely crucial. So how do we ensure online or offline a organization is smooth with their sales?
I think that it goes back to, sales 101. I'll give you an example. If I take a software product, okay, we'll pick a software product and I'll go to their website. And if I take 3, 4, 5 minutes reading through their first page, and I'm still scratching my head trying to work out what is it that you actually do, because it's a marketing fluff to the extreme. And no disrespect to marketers, but then you've lost me. I've lost interest. I don't care. I want to know about your product. I think, what's important is in that online space is, the vendor understanding their market space, understanding who is potentially reading about them, and then succinctly being able to talk about what they do. Now, not just from the point of, A, B, C, D, we do this, we do this, we do this. I think anybody can do that. You can take the name of this company and replace it with another one and have the same, and they're two separate, sites. I think it's identifying the audience and being able to sit down and take the time and effort to think, what are the specific benefits I offer that are different to what this guy offers or that guy offers.
Okay.
And too many people are just too lazy and write the blurb, which is transposable, right? And without that thought process going into it, without someone reading and saying, I get that, that's and here I don't have to think about what's different. They're telling me why they're different, so if it's one Ford dealership versus another Ford dealership, they both sell Ford cars, and maybe the differentiation is the service, the fact that when you come and do a service, in 15 minutes you're gone. Now, if I read that, that's it, I'm done, I'm happy, thank you, that's exactly what I want. But if that's not there, well then, you've missed the point.
So here's the thing, in sales, you hear this word USP. Yeah, it's repeated again and again and again. Is that still very important when you are actually doing your sales? Because like you said, you go from one dealership to another dealership, or let's say look at from one e-learning company to another e-learning company, or let's say from one training company to another training company, or one marketing company to another company. At the end of the day, they're doing the same thing. So is that USP really, really crucial?
It is, because, I don't think you'd be in business if you had an organization that did exactly the same as someone else. I'm currently working with an incredible e-learning organization based out of the Philippines, and we're expanding globally. There are a lot of e-learning companies.
Yes.
And there are a lot of e-learning companies that do very similar things. The issue is differentiating yourself and really sitting down, that's what I was talking about earlier, and thinking through what are those few things that are that important that differentiate us, right, from everybody else out there. Because whether they ask you or not, that's what's going through the mind of the customer. What makes you different? Right? What makes you stand out? Why should I spend time talking to you any further? Why would I not go to, and then a list of 100 names? And you've got to know that. and you've got to be able to elucidate that and elaborate that quickly, eloquently, in a way where they go, I get that. Now, no, again, no disrespect to marketing people, but not in a marketing fashion, in a real, tangible, I can save time and money. This is something nobody else has got. You know, your customers will benefit in these, you know, tangible, concrete benefits. So yes, you know, we used to talk about in the old days the elevator pitch.
Yep.
You know, if you met someone in an elevator and you had 2 minutes to say what you did, that's really difficult, right? You've got 2 minutes, and this guy in the elevator says to you, well, why would I work with you?
Yep.
Well, your USP, you know, is exactly the same. In 1 minute or 90 seconds, what differentiates you from anybody else? What differentiates Rohit Bassi from someone else? You know, why would I or anybody else agree to be interviewed by you versus someone else? And I think companies, unfortunately, are still lazy and don't think that through, you know, and it all goes back to benefits. It's not that USP that you talk about, that elevator pitch has nothing to do what you think. It's relevant to the person that's asking the question. What are the benefits from their perspective, not the benefits that I think they want? And again, that's something else, that a trap we fall into, and we're selling benefits we believe are important. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what Rohit thinks.
That's very interesting, because I know the marketing guild in the, I think it was in the UK, they came up with the term UPB, unique perceived benefit. So the USP is what the organization thinks, you know, this is what their selling proposition is. But from a customer perspective, what do they perceive as their benefit is very, very crucial. And that's something which is somewhat missing in most organizations when they are actually selling their services or their product. So how do we shift them from, and especially this is a very crucial time to look at this, how do we shift them to show the client, the person they're talking to, the unique perceived benefit? How will they benefit?
Well, we've got to stop being lazy, for starters, right? You know,
Step one, no laziness.
Well, you know, and I'll explain that. You know, I think if you look at a salesperson, most salespeople can relate to this. You know, they'll sit down and they have an email, they got a prospecting email they're going to write, and they want to send it to 20 people, right? Now, those 20 people could be in 10 different industries. They could be at multiple hierarchies within the industry. So they could be a CFO, a CEO, head of purchasing. And they will, because they want to get the numbers out, they'll do a spray approach where the same email is sent to everybody.
Spray and pray.
Yep, that's stupidity. You know, the answer to your question is you've got to understand your customers now. You've got to understand your potential customers. If that industry is manufacturing, and I'm talking to, and I want to send an email or a LinkedIn connection to a CFO of a manufacturing company, I can't avoid it. I've got to sit down and do some research. I may know nothing about manufacturing. So I've got to spend the time. It could take me half a day, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, in doing research about manufacturing, relating my product to that, aligning them and trying to determine what benefits I could offer, that industry, then that company, because you've got to research that company, and then that particular hierarchy, in this case, a CFO. And most salespeople, sadly, are still applying the spray, approach, the spray and pray approach. It doesn't work. And especially now when people they have so many issues at hand. Will I keep my job? I'm still getting used to working on Zoom, etc., etc., etc. They're working 12-hour, 14-hour days instead of, and along comes a salesman with a nice email, and they read it and go, "This has no relevance to me." Yeah, why? These benefits apply to someone else. You've got to just do the research. And the days of one to many unresearched can't do it. Just won't work.
Okay, so if you look at this, is one of the things which I notice, and I've noticed there's a difference between an amazing salesperson, a professional salesperson, compared to just someone who is in sales, and that is drive. They have this burning drive to do things. How does one get that burning drive going in them when they're actually doing sales?
I think that you've got the majority of us, if you asked us oldies why we got into sales, I think the majority of us would say we got into it for money, right? But that's not the basis for a burning drive.
Yep.
What happened was we loved what we did, right? And we loved the interaction. We loved being able to provide something that we truly believed in, that helped an organization.
Yep.
And I think it's not just sales. I think that if you're a pilot who doesn't really enjoy flying, but it pays well,
Yep.
or you're a coach, and well, it's kind of okay, makes good money, you're never going to be a great coach. I think that I'm not sure. I think it comes. I'm not sure you learn to have that burning passion. I think it comes from for a salesperson selling something they truly love, they truly believe in, and honestly, you look in the mirror at the end of the day, and if you've made a sale, you feel good. You don't put your head on the pillow and go, "Oh my God, I hope he doesn't find out about this." And I think that amongst the group that I talk to every day, every one of them loves what they do, and they believe in it, and they're honest, and they're ethical, and so that passion just is a natural extension of that. It's not that one drives the other one. It's harmonious. It's there.
So the question is, so you said they're honest, they're ethical. This is very interesting. When I got into sales, and I'm no biggie on sales, I was always under the impression, and this is what it came up, is sales equals being a liar.
Yep.
And this is commonly when I am doing workshops, this comes up by all salespeople. Literally, it comes up with people see sales equals liar. Yet people have to deal with sales people. And the way I looked at it, I said, okay, I'm running a business. I do need to sell. What am I really doing? And I realized I was providing a service. So it was service excellence. So that's how I rephrased sales into service excellence. And I remember a couple of years ago, I came up with the book Success Mastery, and I wrote a chapter called Soul of Sales, the 9 Universal Principles, 9 Universal Laws. And I remember a number of salespeople, and I'm talking, and it's a very interesting point you made, is it's the young people, no offense to the young people, all the old people, but a number of them came up to me and said, and these are people in sales saying, since when did sales have soul? It is the most unethical job to do. If you don't lie, you will not succeed in it. How much truth is in that? Because you've got years of experience compared to what I have.
I mean, it's rubbish. I mean, the reality is that, good salespeople regard what they do as a profession. I mean, we were trained at the beginning. We train ourselves all the time. We have peer-to-peer training. If you talk to a professional salesperson, they regard what they do at the same level a doctor regards what, the integrity a doctor regards his job, a pilot, a whatever. I think if you don't have that mental attitude that I'm a professional, now along with that comes everything that is the foundation for being professional, and that is honesty, integrity, truthfulness. You're never going to survive long term in the old days, you could get away with it because this online thing we're doing now didn't exist.
Hmm.
So you could hide behind, you could lie here, lie here, lie here, and it didn't matter. You can't do that. The world is small, as and customers soon learn.
Hmm.
So it's the attitude you have, and I think whether you're young or old, I know old people my age who whatever it takes to get the sale. Well, you know, it's akin to the doctor who's there, who gives you 2 minutes to listen to what you've got to say, just so he can write a script.
Hmm.
That's not morally and ethically correct,
Hmm.
right? For us, it's the same. I think that the salespeople who are successful are the ones who stand up and go, "I'm proud of what I do. I'm a professional. I work really hard at being this way. I try to keep up my level of knowledge,
Hmm.
but I speak the truth always, with no
Hmm.
exceptions."
Hmm. And that's something which I've always seen. I've been on a number of sales calls with you in the past when you were here in the Middle East, and that was a very big eye opener to me. The way you actually dealt with clients, it was, and what I noticed was you had that. Depending on what client you went to, that versatility, that flexibility, and that adaptability. So there was not one script for every single client. It was based on what they required out of you and being honest that, yes, I can do this for you.
Yeah, I think that you've got to, and it comes down to how you regard yourself, as a professional. There's a sales methodology called the Challenger
Yes.
methodology, right? And I think that's, I'm not a big follower of these compartmentalized sales methodologies. I think it's a great way for people to write books, and become famous at something, right? It's a component of our whole broad spectrum of how to
Mm,
approach sales. And I think that has to be part of it as well, that when people are talking to you, you have the business nous, and almost a moral obligation to challenge them.
mm,
You know, a simple example: we were talking to a telco here about e-learning, and their response was, "Well, it's not in our budget. We'll look at it next year."
mm,
Well, I appreciate that, but what about you're hiring all of these people for your telco? How are you going to train them? Right?
yeah.
And if you can't find the people you want, have you considered looking around for people with skills that maybe you are unaware of, that you could upskill into these roles? How could that not be an important component
Yeah.
now versus a year? And I think as a good salesperson, you're morally obligated to do that. You're not doing that because you want to make a sale. That's the end result. But you know, it, we were taught, and you and I were taught, objection handling. I think that's a crass way of approaching it. But it is what it is, right? But it's the challenger approach is, I guess, a much nicer way of speaking, of addressing that. And that's, well, why do you say that? And challenging them, and trying to understand why, because it could well be that they're simply not interested. That's cool. That's their right not to be interested. Or it could very well be that they're simply wrong.
Mm,
And you have an obligation to engage, and to provide different perspectives and different points of view. The same way when you and I talk, we've discussed, and it turns out I've been wrong. Not often, but it turns out I've been wrong.
Ed is never wrong.
And I think that's part of the sales process, is to be able to engage in a business discussion with a sale almost happening, as a byproduct
Mm.
of that, if that makes sense.
So now comes the big question is, okay, you follow a sales process, you're ethical in the way you're doing things. There's pressure from your organization, or even as an individual who's running a business, you need to meet certain targets in terms of covering just the costs of running your organization. And now the mental health issues start because you're not able to actually, you're doing the best. There could be someone outside over there listening to this interview saying, hey, Ed, I'm doing this. I'm ethical. I'm following a process. I'm doing all that is possible. I'm challenging the client, and yet I'm not getting a sales. And then you have my seniors or other things happening, which is putting a pressure on it. Then I've got my things going at home where I need to sustain a living. And then same with the person who's running the business. How does that individual, all those individual cope with, I would not even say cope, strive and thrive in such a situation, because it can be very agonizing.
Well, I think you can go nuts, man. I mean, you can really lose your health, So let me take that from two perspectives. I mean, it happens, and it happens more often than people are willing to admit.
Yes.
And it's certainly happening to a large degree now. Okay. Businesses have tightened their budgets. Businesses have closed their budgets on for instance, technology expenditures. So if I'm not selling and I think I'm doing everything correct, then those demons start floating around inside your head. I'm going to lose my job. How will I pay for my kids' school? How will we feed the family? Will I get thrown out of my house, etc., etc.? So let me tackle that from two perspectives. If you genuinely, I think most people will know whether they're doing the right thing or not, whether they're following the process or not. But let's say they don't, right? Approach number one, which you've got to do, is you've got to talk to your boss, right? Now, hopefully, you've got a good boss, a reasonable boss, an understanding boss, a coaching boss.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. But take into account that he may be in the same situation you're in.
Yep.
So, my recommendation, and it's worth every single cent, is find a coach. Find someone you can talk to. Now, that could be a friend. But if you're actually paying someone that you've done research about to help you for an hour a week or 2 hours a week on an ongoing basis, you actually get more value when there's money involved. I know it sounds crazy, but if you're paying a professional coach, you need someone, and that could be a sales director right down to a salesperson who's generating leads. You need a third party who can review your process, review what you're doing, go through it and try to look for what areas that could be improved, right? Now, that's one side of it. The other side of it is the very serious aspect of the mental aspect of it.
Yes.
Because depression is something that is really common, and the life of salespeople is, as you know, is there or there. It's up here or down there. It's always a yo-yo. It's always been a yo-yo. But now that yo-yo can go from I've just made a sale to 3 days later you're out of a job.
Yes.
Right. And I think you've got to, it's understanding, again, seeking help either through research or finding a coach or talking to people who have been through it, to see those warning signs. And once they're there, again, there are two components to that. There's a lot that's been written, and I've written a lot about things that can be done. I mean, depression and anxiety is something I've battled with for 40 years of my life.
Yep.
you know, so how to take care of yourself physically, what to do mentally, you know, and especially work from home. You
Yep.
know, work from home, you know, as you know, it's kind of like when you go to sleep, those demons occur when you're laying in bed at night in the dark. Well, when you're working from home, they're crawling around inside your
Yes.
head, creating doubt.
Yes.
Um, you need help, and you've got to get it. And if it doesn't have to be professional at $1,000 an hour to begin with, it may end up that way. But you know, I would seek out people who have been through it, people who are going through it.
Mm.
How are they coping? I'd read up on about it. You know, because there are people who can help in that, and it's understanding it's going on. You know, in some Asian cultures, I mean, I live in Asia at the moment. You know,
Mm.
in some Asian cultures, you know, and my wife will hit me on the head for this, but there's an attitude of we don't have mental illness, we
Yes.
don't suffer from depression, right? It doesn't happen. That's just that. Well, your parents may have been a lot better at hiding it. They did suffer from it, um, but yes, it happens, right?
Mm.
I mean, and if you want a good example, just go spend half a day on LinkedIn and write a post and then see what happens. And the posts will come in and people are going through horrors, you know. So it's recognizing that something's going on and then going out and seeking help, be that with a coach, being that with professionals, being that with, you know, doing reading. Um, but, you know, one thing I can guarantee is that if you don't address it and start doing something about it, it's going to get worse.
Mm.
And then it's a bi-directional thing. It gets worse, your work gets worse, your work gets worse, this gets worse,
Mm.
and that spiral is super quick, you know.
Mm.
And then you're not good for anything, right?
Mm.
It's that serious.
So you yourself have gone through this whole journey, Ed, of, you know, that low and up and into that depression. For those people who are listening out there, what would you, from your experience, because, you know, so Dion Jensen, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, who spoke about mental health and a very, very passionate about getting people out of that depression state and getting them to do whatever is necessary for them to be having a happy life in whatever circumstances they are. And he looks at it from an approach of, you have people you talk to about experience who've gone through it, then there's the clinical approach, and then there's the spiritual culture approach. Looking at yourself, and you've been in sales from a long time, from that time when technology wasn't that high to now, which technology is like, wow, we can't live without technology. What would you recommend from your experience, how someone could cope with that depression, with that mental challenge or problem or situation they're facing?
I tell you, the first thing that you shouldn't do is drink alcohol,
Okay, great.
because I mean, Jay talks about that, right? And I mean, that's what I did, you know. So the easiest, simplest way to do it is to up the wine intake and up the beer intake. It doesn't work. It solves the problem for 3 minutes, and in fact, alcohol um, feeds depression,
Mm,
feeds anxiety, right?
mm,
So get that off the list. Um, Exercise. I mean, you know, I write about this a lot. You know, you've got to exercise.
mm.
You know, there's a Latin proverb, and I did 6 years of Latin, and I forget it at the moment. But you know, healthy mind, healthy body, right?
Okay.
Or the other way around: healthy body, healthy mind. You've got to keep yourself fit. As you let yourself physically go, the anxiety, the depression goes along with that.
Mm,
Change the foods you eat, right? I mean, I love meat, and I love my pasta, and I love my potatoes. I'm Polish, but you've got to change the foods that give you energy, that are lighter on the stomach, that enable you to sleep better. Which leads to the next point: you need to sleep. You need to get your 8 hours or 9 hours. Another important one is, you know, people. people nowadays drive themselves super hard at work.
Mm.
And so the 8-hour day has gone and become a 9, 10, 11, 12-hour day. 5 days have become 6 days. It's recognizing what's your limit.
Mm.
You know, my wife works 16-hour days with her business. I can't do that. I just cannot do it. And you've got to, that's not a weakness. That's me. And it's recognizing, okay, that's the case. I can get up at 5. My wife cannot.
Mm.
She gets up at 8, but she finishes at 1 a.m. I know my times. And so it's establishing what your peak performance times are,
Mm.
doing your best during that time. And then it's establishing a routine where you give yourself breaks, where you allow yourself an opportunity to breathe, an
Mm.
opportunity to take a walk outside. One of the most incredible things that helps in anxiety issues and depression, sunshine,
Okay.
right? Go stand in some sunshine. I mean, it's incredible. The act of standing and walking in sunshine, the vitamin D makes you feel better. It just
Mm.
does.
Mm.
Greenery
Mm.
makes you feel better.
Mm.
So there's lots of non-medication type things that you can do, but the beginning of that is sitting down and having an honest discussion with yourself about who you are and what your limitations are, or finding a close friend. I did it with my wife. And so, you know, someone with, you know, whom you can say, well, Ed, to be perfectly honest, you know, I've seen you after 10 hours of work and you're rubbish, mate, right? And that's good, because you can start to learn what you're and work within those boundaries. Working 12 hours doesn't necessarily make you more productive than working 6, right? So understand, you've got to somehow take that pressure off. And
Mm.
I think finally, it's being able to sit down and look in a mirror, and this is a lot harder than it sounds, and say, you know what? I'm good. I am good at what I do. And again, I praise my wife for this. I mean, you know her extremely well. The
Mm.
audience doesn't, but you know her very well. And she's probably listening to this and going to beat me up. But and she's taught me that this ability to look in a mirror and say, I like who I see. I'm a
Mm.
good person. And if with my best actions, the worst happens, accept it. Maybe that's a door opening for a new opportunity.
Mm.
Now, that's difficult. I found that really hard, really difficult.
Mm.
But she's right, you know, and that helped me a lot. Once I adopted that attitude, well, what's the worst thing that'll happen? You know, I'll get fired. Well, we'll find something else to do,
Mm.
right? We will somehow survive,
Mm.
right? And what can I draw on then to go to my next step? You know, you've been through this as well, where something that's happened in your life has taken you in a whole different direction. That's not always a bad thing,
Mm.
right? The history to me going out on my own wasn't that great, but
Mm.
it's led me into a better space. So
Mm.
that's a very, very short answer to what takes is a long, long subject thing. But I think the key of it is to recognize it. If you're starting to want to stay in bed longer, if that chest is feeling tighter,
Mm.
if you're doubting what you're doing,
Mm.
you need to talk to someone. Otherwise, you know, your life, professionally and personally, is going to pay a price, and it's not nice. I mean,
Mm.
it's not a good thing to go through.
Okay. So that's how you've come across in improving yourself and getting out through those tough, low moments, empowering yourself, enduring that painful time which you've gone through. Um, for the young guns who are out there, because this is what I see, and it's not just the young guns I'm talking about over here, is I see this on a regular basis, and I see this thing about you need to work hard. You need to work 26 hours a day, 8 days a week. Okay, that doesn't exist, but that's what you hear these inspirational, motivational speakers, even well-known business individuals who are globally known keep on saying that. And if you're not doing that, you are not going to be successful. How does one actually cope with that? How does one people say, hey, I'm not going to live up to that? That's where are they getting that from?
Well, I mean, you know, Steve Jobs was classic for that, wasn't he? I mean, he was a great espouser of that belief. You know, I think it's recognizing that, you know, that may be good for certain people. I mean,
Yep.
there are people who can work. You know, Elon Musk is another
Yes.
one. You know, I mean, there are people who are happy to work 20 hours a day, 21 hours a day, sleep 2 hours, and you know, and that's wonderful. You know, but as standing up on a stage and saying that's what is good for all of you is irresponsible. You know, you know, advice is one of those wonderful things that you've got to pick out the best of what works for you. We're all individuals. You know, you and I have known each other 15 years, and there's something there that binds us as friends. A husband and wife are the same, but they're still different.
Yes.
So these people who, that's great for them, but I think it's you being able to sit down and recognize what are my limitations, and what can I do in a finite amount of time, right? So for instance, you still need time to socialize, you still need time to sleep, you need time for your jazz and a cup of coffee, right, to rejuvenate. Others will scoff at that and say, well, you're not being productive.
Yes.
You know, the reality is that you know, if I had a boss like that, that's great, congratulations, it's wonderful, but that means it's time for me to go. You know, I think it's our jobs as mentors is really to kind of give advice, but recognize that our audience is made up of a multitude of individuals, and they have to take that it's Play-Doh, and that Play-Doh needs to be adapted for each and every one of them. So, you know, we have to be able to recognize that they're all different, and as an audience member to be able to take, you know, that bit, and again, that comes to listening to coaches, to reading, and something else that's really super important, and that's talking amongst ourselves. Work from home has isolated us, and I think that you know, salespeople who are struggling and who are hurting and I'm doing everything right, you've got to talk. And we're losing. You know, before you'd run into, you know, Muhammad in the corridor, and you say, Mo, listen, mate, my sales are going down the toilet. What's going on? And you could have a quick chat.
Yep.
But we don't do that anymore, because we have to enable a process in order to get to that person to talk to them. But one size fits all doesn't work. I'm sorry, it's not applicable, you know, and so that's a long-winded answer to what you just mentioned. You've got to recognize what works for you, but you've got to seek advice. You've got to seek collaboration, look for ideas, you know, and you know, what does someone else think? You know, what are their, you know, how would they approach it? And then adapt that to yourself. But 20-hour days wouldn't work, not for me.
See, with all what you're saying is one thing is which is coming up very clear for me is that it's not what is the outer game, but what's the inner game, what's happening inside you.
It is. I think if you don't, you know, it's all about, you can't sell correctly with a clear mind and be able to elucidate your product, its benefits, and be able to listen to a prospect's problems unless you're at peace with yourself, unless there's an element of harmony in yourself. If there's turmoil in your life, if there's turmoil going on internally, if you're doubting your career, if you're doubting your abilities, you're not hearing what people are saying. If you're not hearing what your customer's saying, it's impossible to sell. Right? So, you know, if I was to say to someone, you know, if someone said, how do I become really good at sales? Is you've got to go into sales at peace with yourself.
Mm.
You can't fly a plane if you're worried about your wife leaving you. I mean, that's, it's serious. You've got 400 people in the back who are kind of hoping that you're pretty clear-headed today and focused on what you're doing. Well, being a salesperson is the same. You're selling a product that could affect the lives of thousands of employees. You've got to sell the right product, which means that internally you've got to be calm. You've got to be able to listen, and that's impossible if you're in turmoil, if you're doubting yourself, if you don't believe that you can solve this person's problem. If that's the case, get help. Call your boss, call a colleague, get someone to help you. Listen, that's not a weakness, that's a strength. Go out them to help, and then learn from what they're saying, and then take on and learn to be able to calm. And it sounds like I'm talking, and that could be whether that's spiritual or whether that's physical. It doesn't matter. But in order to be good at it, you've got to be able to be at peace with yourself and as clear-headed as you possibly can be. I mean, that would be don't go in to try to sell when you're in turmoil. You're going to make mistakes.
You got to be having that conscious communication with yourself so that you can give that clarity, show that conviction and compassion with the clients which you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think you've got to have that honesty with yourself. You've got to have that honesty with yourself where, there will be certain situations where, my ego says, just go and talk to this guy. You can do it all on your own. Where the brain is going, you know what? I really think you ought to bring this guy and this guy along to that meeting as well. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength, because there's strength in numbers. They may hear something that you don't hear. They may come up with a solution that you aren't able to do. So I think it's that honesty component in saying, okay, can I do it? Do I have the abilities? Am I in a position mentally to clearly listen to what's being done? Do I have the knowledge to understand the answers he'll be giving me? So yes, a lot of it is having that self-talk, that self-speak, and it sounds, you don't see this in sales books.
No, you don't.
You don't read it, but I think it lays at the core of being a good salesperson is understanding yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and that could be on any given day as well. You're going to change day from day. If you just had a fight with your wife, walked in and banged into the back of someone else's car on your way to a sales meeting, it might be worthwhile calling off that meeting, right? Or calling someone else to do it. So, that sales talk, that self-talk is super, super important, and that self-honesty.
So as we come to the close of the interview, what is that one or two things in this moment which we're in, what salespeople can do for themselves in order to progress, to thrive with their work?
Two things really stand out. I think one is there are some really good people out there who I think if you want to progress as a salesperson, get a coach. I had 2 or 3 mentors who changed my life. Now, I was fortunate. I happened to be working with them, but they remained my mentors. One of whom, remains a mentor to this very day. John and I talk every day. And, he's a guy I go to for advice, right? So, that's the first thing that I would do is get a coach. The second thing is, we're now in a different environment. We're working at home. Talk to colleagues, talk to peers, discuss what you're doing, listen to their issues, and look for those nuggets, look for those gems, because they're going to say things you're going to learn from. So it's coaching 101, and this is coaching, I guess, 201, 3 or whatever, where you're talking and for us, we used to get a lot of help by talking in the corridors, having a coffee together. We don't call our peers anymore. We talk on Zoom or whatever to our prospects, but not amongst ourselves. And there should be more of that. That would be the two things that I would really highly recommend, because it's different now. It's, your mentor is not in your office anymore. Find a mentor, get someone who can advise you. Even if it costs you money, believe me, it's money well worth spent. One sale and you'll pay for that.
Very true.
Everything else is a bonus. That's the way to look at it.
In the case of, as a sales individual, you're doing your work and that negative thought, that negative feeling just comes in, comes through the crack. How can someone deal with that before it explodes into something bigger?
It's recognizing it. I think you've got to recognize it. And self-talk is a whole different subject that we could talk about, but, have a talk with yourself. How real is that? Right? Is it a real thing? Do I have a history of prejudging or making assumptions that actually haven't turned out true? Right? I mean, have that chat with yourself for a minute or 2 minutes, and it could very well be that the answer to your question is, well, actually, this is not the first time this has happened. This is the 1,634th time this has happened. And in 1,633 times, you were wrong. Right? So there's probably a lotto chance that you're wrong as well here. So put it aside, get on with it. Right? So I think that quick self-talk is really, really important. And then I think, if it's a real doubt, if it's a real issue and you really think, look, this is ground in some sense of reality, talk to someone, call a mentor, call a friend, dial a friend, call someone that you can quickly have a chat with. I have a couple of guys that we are in touch. We've been in touch for 30 years now, and that's what we use each other for. We'll call each other, say, look, this is what's going on. What do you think? And they can quickly, or when it really, really fails and you want a totally an honest opinion, go to your wife, because she'll tell you you're an idiot. Get over it and just go do your job, because we need to put food on the table. Now, between all of that, that can only take a few minutes, and that's kind of how I do it. Like I said, not all, shoes are made for different size feet.
Yes.
That's how I handle it. And, and you can usually get through it. Here's the amazing thing. Once you're in front of the customer, 99.999% of the times, the doubts are out. You're now engaged, and people are humans. We love to engage. So now you're on a whole different topic. You're talking about that person's problems. You're engaging with them. And the amazing thing happens. All this rubbish and negativity floats out, because your focus comes to this person in front of you, and you trying to, and that true salesman professionalism comes out.
Yes.
All right. So, that's been my history of it.
Thank you. I truly, truly appreciate for you being on the call, and for all the listeners who've been listening to Ed talking about his experience. And this is practical experience. We're not talking from a book, not a theoretical way of looking, but practical, real life, over 40 years of experience as a sales individual, a professional sales individual. Ed, how can people get into contact with you? Because there's a lot of wisdom which you've shared with us, and it's just touching the surface. But I'm sure people out there would want to speak to you. How can they get in touch with you?
I think the easiest thing to do is I'm on LinkedIn. I'm fairly prolific on LinkedIn. I write a lot. So Edward Musiak on LinkedIn, and direct message me. That would be the easiest way to do that.
What would be your email address for the listeners?
So my email address is emusiak, EMUSIAK, @gmail.com.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
emusiak@gmail.com.
emusiak@gmail.com. That's EMUSIAK @gmail.com. Thank you, Ed. Truly appreciate you being on Raw Life. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the listeners who've been listening to the show. See you in the next show. Take care.
Rohit, thank you. Thanks, man.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.